1899 to 1948. If you look back right by the flagpole here, there's a big rock, and it gives the date August 16th, 1899. That rock was there. That was the day that the park opened, and that rock has always been in that spot. So the park was developed by the Ohio Central Attraction Company, which basically was the interurban between Bucyrus and Galion. They developed the park to improve their ridership for people coming to the park, in and out of the park and stuff, and riding their interurban cars. The Ohio Traction Company owned this park till they managed it till 1907. And then they turned it over to some businessmen, to Galion and Bucyrus businessmen, to operate, because they decided basically as a railroad company, this wasn't their forte. The park was always billed as a ladies' and children's resort. And I think clear to the end, and you can correct me, D or Ed, but I think clear to the end, they maintained that it was for ladies and children, and it was a pretty wholesome, clean park. I have read some stories, I'm not going to go over them today, but of some of the concerns here at the park, mostly with the women during the dances in the evening and stuff, right, Dee? But it was quite a park. It was 57.9 acres. It was purchased for $2,895, which is $50 an acre. Yeah, that was pretty good money back in those days, but still, think about getting all this for $50. The original design of the park was for an artificial lake, which is not this pond, but an artificial lake, some pavilions, merry-go-round, and a bandstand. That was the original concept. It developed from there, but really they had more than that when they first opened. So, as I mentioned, in 1907 to 1916, a group of Galion and Bucyrus businessmen maintained the park. They operated it and kept it going. There were major problems during those periods of time. One of them, with the growth of the early years, started to dwindle once those groups took over. This park, and I talk about growth, and I'll probably get to it later, but it was not uncommon to have events and picnics out here that were from 3,000 to 8,000 people. I read one report where the Groceries Association had a picnic out here of 10,000 people. So if you can imagine that, 10,000 people riding the interurban cars that come out here, that was quite a...
There's a record of an 8-hour wait to ride back after the event was over back on the interurban.
Yeah, and then breakdowns. The interurban never was, from the stuff I read, really efficient. They started out with, I think, 4 cars, and it didn't handle the crowds, obviously. As Ed said, there were reports of over 8 hours of waiting once you got here to get back to Galion or Bucyrus. They did add more cars later, but they had all kinds of breakdowns and mechanical problems. I remember one report of one of the cars hitting a cow and shut down the railroad for hours and hours. So if you imagine being stranded out here, it's about 4.5 miles each way to Galion and Bucyrus, but if it's midnight, that'd be kind of interesting. In 1916, a gentleman by the name of Ralph Jolly from Bucyrus took over the management of the park. Ralph was a wholesale businessman, is that right, Mike, in Bucyrus? And I think a big part of his interest was the products that he sold, he could sell out here and make some money. So Jolly ran this, took it over in 1916. In 1925, he bought the whole park for $10. Ed, I'll give you $100. The 1930s were the golden years of the park. There's a lot of reports of big bands and dancing and picnics. There was a circuit of big band entertainment through, what is it, Mike, you know better than me, Sandusky and Cleveland and the bigger cities, and they would tap in to those people that were traveling to entertain in those big cities and bring them out here at the park. Sammy Kay was here. There was a gal by the name of Ruth Ellington, which is Duke Ellington's sister. She entertained here. Jean Calloway, which is Cab Calloway's sister, and Guy Lombardo came here. Guy Lombardo's, the reports on there was, he came out here with a whole bunch of white Packard convertibles and stuff, and it was quite a show when he came here. So, but it was big time entertainment for the area. Some of the events I'll go over real quick that they had here was vaudeville. It was 6 nights a week. Now, Mike, I didn't say burlesque, I meant vaudeville. Don't mix that up. I mentioned the picnics that were common here for all along through the life of the park. There was a lot of live stage entertainment, animal acts, what were some of the other ones, comedians, but smaller time stage people would come here and put on shows. A pony diving into the water. Yeah, well, I'll get to that. But they had all kinds of entertainment throughout the years. Dancing was huge. A lot of dancing here at this park. I wished I'd talked to my mom and dad about it, see if they came out here, but I never had that opportunity. Boating. They had a big lagoon that was down in the lower parts here, and they did a lot of canoeing and boating down in that area. There was a bowling alley added in 1900, Natural History Collection Museum. I think they charged 5 or 10 cents to get into it, but the reports were that there was a lot of good artifacts and stuff in that museum. There were a lot of Sunday band concerts here. They were very cautious from the things I've read about activities on Sunday. There was a lot of people didn't want activities on Sunday, but they did have bands and kept things in a low roar. They didn't allow them to dance on Sundays normally, but then Ralph Jolly decided he was going to have a dance club, so they didn't call them dances on Sunday. After that, it was club activities. So, sporting events, a lot of baseball, football, boxing, those kind of things went on here. Jim Thorpe, I don't know how many of you remember Jim Thorpe, but he was a famous athlete. He played for Bucyrus several years on their basketball team out here, and he brought his football team from LaRue, which was a national football team, to play out here a few times. So there were firing ranges and shooting competition going on here. I remember when I came back here in the 50s, the remnants of the shooting gallery were, at least that's what I thought it was still here, and remember seeing that. In 1933, they had, once there were cars, they had movies on the ball field. They had regular movies, and then later on in '46, they started drive-in movies on the ball field, which were all along the road out here. Okay. The main entrance to the park, actually, and I mentioned it, I think, but was the rock right here. You would come back, and if you go out on the road and look towards 19, you'll see what's left of 2 rows of big trees. That was a tree entrance. It was, the pictures I've seen were pretty neat.
They eventually ended up building a building out there. It used to be the people that sat on the lawns of the interurban come, but they finally built a building.
For the setting, yeah. The interurban ran on the north side of the road.
That's why that area north of the road's always empty now, because that's where the interurban is.
Okay, and I remember, it was pointed out to me that the telephone poles on the north side are set back further from the road than the south side, so they had room for the interurban to run. In 1902, there were two huge events here at the park. One of them was Carrie Nations gave a lecture on her temperance movement. Anybody some of you probably remember Carrie Nations. I guess this isn't where she took a hatchet.
She chopped up the bar.
Did she? Okay, there was a bar here and she had a hatchet and she chopped up the bar while she was here. The other one in 1902 was the first anniversary memorial service for President McKinley's death. So that was a huge event for the area. There was a pool here. It was 80 by 200 feet. It held 1,200 swimmers maximum. It had a 40 by 90 foot bathhouse. It held 660,000 gallons of water. Now, that brings up an interesting issue if you read some of the history on it. They claimed that they drained and filled that pool once a week. Now, if you had very, very good pumps, today's pumps would pump that much in about 20 hours. I think Ed said that his reports were, it took like a day and a half to fill that pool. Some of the rides here at the park, and if I'm not mistaken, and maybe you guys, I couldn't find it in my notes, but I thought somewhere I found out that there were 39 rides here at one time.
They advertised 40, but that also included boats and canoes and all that stuff.
So, close to 40 rides here at the park at one time. So that was a lot more than they had envisioned when they opened the park. They started out with a 40-foot Ferris wheel. Eventually that was changed to a 70-foot Ferris wheel. They had mechanical shooting galleries, and as I mentioned, I remember that, and they were right in this area, right in here. They had a skating rink, open air dancing. Back in the area, just on the other side of the house, if you walk around, you'll see big cement platform. That was the outside dancing area. The pavilion for the park was right over in here, close to the park, or the pool.
Right beside the pool.
Right beside the pool. They had many kids rides, and most of them were portable, so they could take them down and take them to county fairs and stuff around each year. They had the Dodgems, and I remember the Dodgem building when I sneaked back in here and looked around. It was right beside, in my memory, it was right beside the shooting gallery. But another thing I remember, and nobody else can confirm it, so maybe with age your mind plays tricks on you, but right out on the road there's a drainage ditch on that corner of the property. And right on this side in the corner, I remember seeing old cars sitting down in there in a kind of a stone building or something. I don't know whether they were Dodgem cars or roller coaster cars, but they did. I remember seeing those cars. They had a miniature railroad called Tunerville. It was up in this area about where the house is.
The station's where the house is now.
Yeah, the station's where the house was, and they operated that for some time with a Model T engine out of Model T. They had miniature golf here. They had a penny arcade. And then, how many people remember a wooden roller coaster here? See, okay. It was called the Pippin. You got on it down in this area and it went over towards the road and down the road. And that was my fascination as a kid, and why I still am fascinated with this park today, was always seeing that roller coaster. It wasn't running when I was there, but I do remember it was purchased in 1931 from a park called the Luna Park in Cleveland. Now, I've had people tell me there was a Luna Park over on the other side of Mansfield, right, Mike?
Yeah, I understand there was another, but
Okay,
according to
but-
Hoffer's book, it was Cleveland.
Yeah, Luna Park in Cleveland. It was free to the park for taking it out up there. So they got it for nothing. It was lowered when they got it here because of the wood was rotting. So you can imagine why they paid them to get it out up there. The roller coaster was a 1/4 mile in length. And it actually, I mean, the hills and stuff out there, to me, they were huge, so. But there were many, many safety issues, and the reports are that a lot of people would not ride that roller coaster. They always were having brake problems. There were old wooden brakes and stuff on it, and it ran until 1940. I remember reading somewhere, I think, memory again, but that the last time it ran officially as a park ride, the brakes went out and the coaster got stuck up the big hill. And people had to be taken out and walked down the little walkway that was on the side, that if you touched the rails, they'd fall off. And so that's when they closed. There were a lot of animals here at the park over the years. They had giraffe rides in 1913. They had alligator and reptiles from 1919 to 1921. They had monkeys from the Toledo Zoo, 1919 to 1921.
They did escape once too.
Didn't they? So that would have been, did they catch them?
It took a while.
They had 36 horses, 2 elephants, 1 zebra, and it wasn't during the park years, but for 10 years, they had bears here. Thanks to Ed. Ed, I don't know what, did you get them from the zoos or?
No, I thought they got it in.
He bought exotic bears and raised them out here and took care of them. So that would have been interesting. I think you ought to go back to doing that. As Ed mentioned, fireworks were very prominent out here. They had a lot of fireworks. And there were some interesting stories. Ralph Jolly, the guy that ended up owning this park, was, what was the word you used earlier?
Shyster.
A shyster. There were stories about him, when he owned the park, he took the handles off of all of the water spigots and pumps and everything, so people had to buy his soft drinks and stuff. And the reports I read on the fireworks, they had them in the evenings, but he would not allow them to start until the maximum amount of people were there. So he would use that to draw people in to get them to spend money. The last show, the last fireworks show was on June 19th, 1948. But there was no spectators for that show. A lightning storm, thunderstorm came through the area, hit one of the buildings, and the fire spread to all of the other buildings. Plus, one of the buildings had all the fireworks for the July 4th Memorial Day celebrations.
Dance hall.
And the dance hall, and all of those fireworks went up, but there was nobody here. So, that ended up being actually, the end of the park. The fire burned or everything was destroyed within approximately 30 minutes. There was $100,000 in losses with no insurance. The park closed after that.
Okay, so here is part of the Olentangy River back there, and this was part of the original dam of Seccaium Park that created the lagoon that provided water for the swimming pool that Seccaium had for the visitors.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm standing at the entrance sign from Seccaium Park that operated in Crawford County, Ohio. As you can see, it opened up on August 16th, 1899, and it operated from 1899 to 1948. And it's located along State Route 19 between Bucyrus and Galion. And it was actually started by the interurban trolley that had a line that ran between the two towns, and it was a way for them to make money to get more people to ride the trolley, incidentally. It featured nearly 40 rides in its peak, including a roller coaster, which came from a park in Cleveland at no cost to them other than the fact that they had to take it down and reassemble it. And they've said when they reassembled it that they actually didn't make it as high because a lot of the wood was rotten. The park closed in 1948, June of 1948 to be exact, and it closed because there was a bad thunderstorm that rolled through the area, and a strike of lightning struck the main buildings, and everything burned to the ground, causing about $100,000 in damage, and there was no insurance. And so that was the end of the park at that point in time. It's named, the park, Seccaium Park, was actually named after the Seccaium Indians. The legend has it that there is the two rivers that run in the area. The Sandusky River, which is north of here, the Olentangy, which is south, which is this way, and that they used to cross through this area, and that's where they came up with the name Seccaium Park.